Hello, my name is Nick Webb, and I am representing my fellow teammates Kyle Harrell, Thomas Fawcett, and Kyle Anderson from Team Charlie in discussing our game Wasteland War Machine. Wasteland War Machine is a hybrid of classic arcade-style shoot-'em-up games and strategy-based tower defense games. As you might be able to tell, we were heavily influenced by the Mad Max series, and more specifically the latest one, Mad Max Fury Road. In our game, we wanted to give players a chance to customize their own war rig by purchasing weapons, armor, and engines, and using their unique war machine to fight off waves of enemies, dodge hazards, and defeat the game's 7 unique bosses through 7 unique locations. Wasteland War Machine features 7 levels with varying difficulties in which players must fight waves of enemies to advance to their level's boss. At the start of the game, players are given the option to pick which level they want to tackle first. After selecting a level and customizing their war rigs, players will fight through 3 increasingly difficult waves of enemies in order to reach the level's boss. At the end of each wave, the player gets a chance to use scrap they have accumulated by destroying enemies to upgrade parts, fix their war rig, or buy and sell new parts. After defeating a boss, the player will gain a new unique weapon, which will then be unlocked to them for the remainder of the game. After defeating all 6 initial bosses, players will unlock the final run and attempt to take on the final boss in order to get to the Oasis. With a focus on dynamic gameplay and player choice, our game gives players a unique experience each time they play the game. Hazards and enemies are spawned dynamically, and each can be used to aid the player as well as hinder them. Ramming an opponent into a hazard may deal extra damage, while dodging an enemy's attack may cause them to deal damage to other enemies on the field. The game also features more player assertive tactics to play with, such as manually fired weapons like the harpoon gun and mines, and destructible hazards to clear a path when the player is in a pinch. Looking back on development, we feel we made a lot of things work for us because of our ability to take on multiple tasks for multiple areas of our design, and not to shoehorn ourselves into specific areas. We all were able to help each other out, problem solve when needed, and work on multiple areas of our game at once. Having this kind of arrangement, we could focus on the work we wanted done and spread the workload out evenly amongst our team for more effective results. We also had to rethink a lot of how we approach designing our systems in order to give us the easiest and maximum amount of time to get all the content we wanted in the game finished. For example, refactoring the damage system into a broad system helped in expanding our weapons and enemies. Our scripts were very specific before the refactoring, and such an approach wouldn't have been sustainable. Another extremely helpful technique we found was our level wrapper. When we first began implementing additional levels, we had each level set up as its own scene. We quickly realized that this would create a lot of work, as any changes to the UI would have to be copied across every scene. We ended up containing the entire game within one scene, with each level contained within its own game object that would activate when that level is chosen. This was tricky to implement, but ended up saving us a lot of time in the end. As with any development process, we ran across things that didn't end up working the way we wanted to, or things we did that didn't work as well as we had hoped. From a technical standpoint, one of the most important parts of our game was the build phase. We realized this early on and implemented it by manually scripting it, but soon realized it didn't give us the freedom we needed to create something that felt fun and simple to utilize. We were able to remedy this by learning about Unity's Canvas system and switching all of our UI elements to that system, which was much simpler for us and allowed us to design a greater user interface. On the other hand, our AI detection when it came to avoiding hazards was a complicated endeavor that never got fully rectified. When doing basic enemy movement, we realized too late that we could no longer use the navmesh properties in Unity and make them detect hazards. We ended up having to use a timer to get them to move around the objects, but they still would get stuck in the terrain or die off screen. While this problem has been fixed to the point of playability, it caused a lot of workarounds to get through to solve most of the issues. From a development standpoint, we struggled early on balancing the tasks we needed to complete week to week. We ended up focusing too much on certain areas and not pushing ourselves enough to get the game to a proper state. This meant we had to work a lot harder to catch back up to where we needed to be, and meant we had to drop some design ideas for the sake of time. But we were able to address this and finish with a strong game that we are proud of. We learned a lot from this final project, most importantly being to treat your teammates with respect. Our team never fought or had any real complications because we were able to solve any issues we may have had with respect to one another, and it really showed in our growth over the course of this project. By the end, we were a well-oiled machine, able to be self-efficient individually and strong together. One major technical aspect we learned that was extremely beneficial to us, aside from Canvas, was to understanding script inheritance. This allowed us to use code we already established to cut down on the amount of code we needed for each object in our game. We used this technique for many aspects of our scripts, and it cut down both on the code we had to use and the time we may have spent fixing issues in our code. It's also the reason we were able to make such a dynamic game. As a team, we are very proud of the game we created. While there is always room for improvement, we feel we achieved the initial game we set out to make, and we were able to implement a lot of what we wanted to from our original design. The result is a game we feel is fun and exciting to play with some great replay value. It's something we'll always be able to look back on and learn from to better ourselves, and something to be proud of as we move on to bigger and better things.